Welcome, Sandro, or welcome back. You've been on the channel
Thank you.
before, and I'm gonna get your title right this time
No, keep
because,
it. I like the FM. Has
yeah,
a nice ring to it.
I advertised you as an FM, but you're a CM and you're a coach. And today I'm super excited about this lesson that you're gonna do for us because we're going to talk about setting up attacks in chess,
Hmm.
which, yeah, I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool. I'm ready whenever you are.
Yeah, we're ready. We're excited to get started. And I guess
Sounds good.
the earlier the better since the match is soon.
Yeah, let's do it. So today we're talking about how to set up the attack. So there's many already resources about how to attack, but how do you actually get into a position where you can attack is sort of the topic for today. So I prepared a lot of practical examples because it is a very practical topic, and I'm going to be asking some questions here and there. So it's going to be also interactive. And let's get started. So first thing that we're going to learn right off the bat is that attacks only work from strategically sound positions, very strong positions. So it's crucial to know all the opening rules, all the opening principles to help achieve a position in which it's possible to attack from. So it all starts from the very opening, and we're going to see as an example immediately an example of, let me pull it up here. There we go, an example of a opening where something has gone wrong. So I just made this up completely. So white played some suboptimal opening moves, whereas black played the quote unquote perfect opening. So as we may know from the past, the opening rules, the main important things for the opening, the most important things are center control, minor piece development, and castling. Those are the three opening rules, which black has here perfectly followed to the letter. There was no double moves with the same piece, there was nothing out of the ordinary, and black has now built a powerful, strong position from which they're able to execute an attack very successfully. Whereas for white, something has clearly gone wrong here because they've played some moves which don't really help with the opening.
They
For
don't
example,
really make
h3,
sense.
f3, like there's a lot of pawn moves. You see this especially at the lower levels, like sub 700, I would say, from my coaching experience. A lot of pawn moves which don't benefit the pieces. So, like for example, this knight literally has no legal moves. This bishop also no legal moves. And this bishop is being blocked by the pawn and so on. You get the point. So only black can reach a successful attack here. And for example, the way they would do so is by exploiting the weaknesses, in this particular case, the dark squares. So if it's black to move right now, they would already go for something like e4. So they would threaten bishop to g3, which would already coincidentally be a checkmate. But also the move e4 is also like a central strong break, gaining further space, attacking. All of that we're going to see a little bit later. In this current position, it's actually white to move. So let's say they play something just to demonstrate this e4. So e4, and white has no time to capture this pawn on the count of the very dangerous bishop g3, for example. And if
Hmm.
they cannot capture this pawn, then this pawn even continues to e3, which even kills the white position further. Let's just illustrate that. So, for example, white plays something. I'm going to play a random move because there's no way to defend this bishop g3, coincidentally. And e3 would hit even harder, forcing this knight to go further back. So you can see that we're just going back and more passive while black is making clear progress. And this pawn is really a nail in the coffin because it blocks our pawn, which is supposed to move out of the way for our pieces. So opening mistakes are very important to focus on because they carry a snowball effect.
Yeah.
So it's a bit outside of the scope. We're not going to learn opening rules right now, but it's very important to mention because this is where it all comes from. So white played a suboptimal opening, leading to a very problematic position, essentially.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because sometimes I think when I have good positions, well, this is like a digression and touching on something else, but sometimes I can find it a bit hard to choose which pawn break should I go for? Should I go for
Hmm.
e4 or should I go for d4? But in this case, it's quite clear with all the weaknesses on the dark squares on like f2 and e3 and g3 that like the pawn break that supports the dark squared bishop, it does make sense.
Yeah, agreed. So if white wants to uh, regain the fight for space, try to take back the center, d4, and try to get some dark square control before it's too late with the moves. something along queen h4, bishop g3, before black gets the chance to exploit those weaknesses. But it all starts from the opening, so that's our first sort of a lesson and major takeaway for today. The next thing that I want to talk about is going to be when can we actually attack? So we said it all starts from the opening and we get some good positions, but this is the very rare case where our opponent doesn't play according to the opening rules. What if our opponents also know the opening rules and principles and both of us play a good opening? Which middle games can we attack and which middle games can we not attack? So there are some hints that exist within the position, which we have to recognize, which will get easier by experience, but for now we're just going to learn them, and then they'll become second nature once you start actively looking for them. So we are going to go back to chapter 1 here quickly, because in this one, I'm going to copy paste to you, which you can put in the chat, all the hints that exist for knowing when to attack. So I'm going to put it on Skype here, or actually I'm going to paste it in the chat myself, if that's okay.
Yeah.
It works. Oh, character limit 500. Okay, I'm going to allow you by pasting it on Skype. I'm not sure if you also have the character limit, probably not. Hope that works. So just copy paste that in the chat. It's all the hints, and we're going to read them out after they are in the chat.
Okay. I will post them in chat.
Wonderful.
I think that was too much.
Let me see if I can copy paste the
Point
rest.
4 and
yeah, point 4 to the end.
Okay.
That's
post
the second
it.
message if possible. It's the same for all limit. Okay. Okay, there we go. It's in 2 messages, all good. So let's take a look at each one individually. And while we do that, I'm going to bring up a position so it's easier, so we don't look at the starting position. There we go. So we have a position in which it is possible to attack, and we're going to actually pinpoint why. So if you gave this to an experienced player, this position, and said, hey, you're playing white, they would instantly recognize that the long-term plan for white is to attack kingside.
Yes.
And based on their experience, based on their knowledge of principles and rules. But for low-rated players, it's not very intuitive, and it's not supposed to be. But that's why we have these hints.
And that is because the pawn chain is pointing towards the king side?
Exactly right. That's one major hint.
And
but other
this
ones
is
exist too.
Just a question. This emerged from the French?
Yes, indeed.
Yes, it's a French pawn structure.
Exactly right. So this is the typical French center. And in the French, the basic idea for black is to try and break down this center, which is sometimes overextended. And for white, the idea is to hold onto this center because that's what allows them that center control necessary to transfer into a kingside attack. Now, let's take a look at those hints, read them out just quickly. So number 1, piece activity. If your pieces are more active and better than your opponents, and preferably working together, so coordinated, that's one small hint that it's time for a kingside attack. So piece activity plays a huge role. As we saw in our initial position where we played the bad opening, we had no piece activity anywhere. So we had 0 chances of a kingside attack. Now to come back. Number 2 is going to be space, which is very visible here. So this pawn over halfway, whenever a pawn goes over halfway of the board, so a white pawn on the 5th rank, or a black pawn on the 4th rank, that's a claim at a space advantage. And the reason space is so important, it's essentially the territory grabbed by your pawns. We can look at it that way. So whoever has more space usually has better minor pieces. Space mostly affects the minor pieces, meaning knights and bishops. So for example, as a result of this e5 pawn, already we're grabbing some squares away from the enemy pieces, forcing this knight to move, for example.
So the minor pieces, or the light officers, like we say in Norway, they enjoy more territory because they can move more freely behind their own pawns, and the pawns are like acting like a shield in a way. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah. So because we have this e5 pawn, it means that their pieces cannot contest these squares, and usually that's what they will use to fight against our pieces. So this is not such a clear example of a space advantage because it's a very minor space advantage. It's like only one pawn. But if we had like an overwhelming space advantage, like if our white pawns came up to here or something like this, this would be much more visible. Suddenly all of these squares behind that, let me just do the outline. So that would be the space grabbed by our pawns. All of these, let's make them blue, are now squares available for our pieces. Our pieces can freely jump into those. Knight f4, bishop comes in, the other knight maybe comes in. So very, very instructive to see that space is one of the leading hints which tell you, hey, it's time to attack that part of the board.
Yeah.
That's also important to notice, that part of the board, because I see a lot of players who go, oh, I have a space advantage, let me attack, and then they go queenside attack. But your space advantage isn't here, unfortunately, so your pieces are going to be much worse here. They're not going to have much room for maneuvering.
Yeah, because actually black has the spades advantage on that side, I think.
Correct.
So then you're playing on black side of the board,
Yeah,
and
automatically meaning
then
black.
you're kind of just inviting in. You're like disturbing a hornet's no, how do you say nest, and you're just inviting in all these wasps into your position.
Yeah,
You don't want to do that.
exactly. So this is like our area of the board. This is their area of the board. That's an easy way to think about it. So like any sort of tactical battle that occurs on one side of the board is going to usually favor the side who has the space advantage there. So in simpler words, black has the space advantage on the queen side if they play c4, for example, automatically meaning if we enter any tactical battle here, like series of trades and complications, most likely it's going to favor black because they're going to have better pieces as a result of this space.
Yeah, and I think one thing that helped me a lot when I was a beginner, or more of a beginner than now, is if you draw an arrow from b2 to e5, you can see it points to the right. So that is kind of an indication you want to play on the right side. So that's quite an
Yeah.
easy and handy tip. And the same thing for black, from f7 to d5.
Yeah, exactly right. And a lot of students who come to me for coaching also tell me, "Oh, I've heard of this sort of principle that says, oh, attack in the direction of your pawn chain." It's like a thing people say, but nobody really explains it. And then they ask me for an explanation, and I put it into very simple terms. So let's just play something here. So let's play a random move for white, just like I play c4 for black. So we're supposed to play on the king side, but what happens if we go opposite? Let's say we don't know about this rule, we just go queen side. Well, unfortunately, this creates weaknesses. That's the main point, because not only is it good to attack here, but it's bad to attack here, so it also works the other way. If you go b3 as a pawn break, they take, you take, now the c3 pawn is just a backwards pawn. It's a weakness. So long term, black just has a very easy plan. Rook c8, queen c7, just put immense pressure on this one because we went against our pawn chain. So
Yeah.
we're bringing the base of the pawn chain closer to them. For
Yeah.
example, if you play c4 now in any way, shape, or form, let's say it tactically works out, d4 will be seriously weak
Yeah.
because these two will be traded, and so on. So that's the simple logical explanation why we attack in the direction of our pawn chain, not to create further weaknesses.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, very straightforward. So that's why we're looking for the space advantage on this side of the board. So let's keep reading the hints here. So number one, piece activity. Number two, space. Number three, enemy king safety, which can tie into space as well, because let's say they castle here, which they are very likely to, they won't have the f6 knight as a result of our attacking pawn. So the pawn on e5, when you put a white pawn on e5 or a black pawn at e4, that's called the attacking pawn. It even has a name because it's so typically a part of the attack and a very strong pawn. Taking away the knight on f6, meaning that h7 will be a lot weaker later. So very, very strong. Number four is going to be pawn structure hints, as we say, the pawn chain. And number five, development advantage. I basically just made a list of all the things that a high-rated player just intuitively recognizes. But for low-rated players, it's not intuitive. So when you have a development advantage, you have to go for the attack because it's a temporary type of advantage, so you have to strike quickly. In other types of attacks in middle games, it's very important to time an attack correctly and not go too early before you have all your pieces in the fight, before all your pieces are ready. But for a development advantage, if your opponent plays some sort of strange opening, it's very important that you attack as soon as possible, right after you finish the opening. And then we have the last two, number six, weak squares or outposts nearby. And the last is center is completely under your control and preferably closed, making wing attacks stronger. Another principle of chess that says meet a wing attack with a center attack. However, when the center is closed, that's really, really hard to do.
I've heard that when attacked in the center strike on the flank
Hmm.
thing, but I've never heard it like the other way around, like you just said.
Yeah. And we're going to see, I have actually examples of that, which are going to be our next two positions. So let's adjust this position slightly in the next one, previous position, but half open center. So we just take away these two pawns. And now it's not a completely closed center. It's a half open center because the E file is fully open. D file is closed. So it's a half open center. Is a kingside attack still possible? Well, yeah, but it's going to be a lot more difficult because there's going to be a lot of counterplay possible through the E file and through these now open squares, basically. So let's see an example variation of how this would look. So I prepared an example variation. So for white, I played attacking moves on the king side, and for black, I played normal logical moves. So let's say knight to g3. When you attack, you want to reroute pieces to that side of the board where you would like to attack, because pieces love to be coordinated and work together on the same side. So
Yeah.
knight g3 makes a lot of sense, prepares bishop d3. Let's say black castles. Bishop to d3, logical development, pointing towards the king, makes sense. Bishop b7, finishing development. Castles. C takes d4, c takes d4. Let's say rook c8. And the reason I say it's still possible is because we have a lot of pieces that are coordinated, and we have enough center control. The center is not fully open, so it's still kind of hard to completely cause action between all the pieces. So these pawns are doing well to stop their counterplay for the most part. So this bishop is closed, this queen is having issues, but I have another example after this in which the center is fully open, so you're going to see a concrete difference. So right now, the attack is still possible, it's just a little bit more difficult. So we have knight e5. If it's captured, of course, we take with the f pawn to open up our rook, to open up our bishop. So black never really wants to take this. So let's say they play knight f6, and we're just keeping the pressure. Knight h5, for example, defended by the queen, all good. So if they take, we just get the queen in. After that, maybe a rook lift is imminent. We have a lot of pressure on the king side. So if somebody gave me this position and told me, hey, this was a game that was played, and white won with a big attack, like white managed to execute a very well planned out kingside attack and win pretty quickly, I would say, oh, okay, I can kind of see that happening, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not impossible by any means. And black is the one who is seriously under pressure here. Now, how to attack is a whole different topic, but this is how you set it up, basically. Reroute pieces, put them to strong positions, and just go closer and closer and closer, with ideally every piece you have.
So, to summarize, what you're saying is like if you're able to close the center and control it, it might be easier than if you control the center but it's not closed.
Correct.
Yes.
So it's to compare the first and the second position. So this is our second position. The first one was with the pawns. With the pawns, we didn't have to worry about any counterplay, essentially. Let's see it one more time. So the only counterplay they have is c takes d4, like the pressure they have on this pawn. But we would just
Yeah,
meet that with c takes d4.
because they're like they have no
That's it.
moves.
Yeah, basically. There's nothing they could do here without weakening something else. So the main move here for white, there's been some master games that were played here, is h4. Literally just saying, hey,
Yeah,
center is closed, let's
okay.
go.
I saw chat earlier wrote G4 here looks juicy, but
It does. G4 is
yeah.
also a move, yeah. Just a little bit of caution when you play these moves because of this diagonal, but in this particular position, no worries. After this, you could just go knight g3, even bishop f2 is fine. Again, because the position is so closed that we're even welcome to put our king on f2. It's insanely difficult to open things up here because of the nature of the position. So when the position is closed, generally you shouldn't be so hesitant to just push kingside pawns and go for it.
Yeah.
So in the Masters games that I saw, just h4 was played, and really funny actually, after castles, knight g5, h6, white just literally gave the knight in
Yeah.
multiple games because the h file will be super easy to play with. So let's
Yeah,
say
yeah.
g4, just go for it.
Yeah.
H takes, and the h file is wide open. So as soon as you play like queen d2, move the knight, queen h2, that's already like game over.
This looks horrible
Yeah.
for black.
Yeah, but that's the thing. And a lot of players are hesitant to give up a knight because, oh, no, my knight. But you have to look at the position as one piece, as like in its entirety. The fact that they're
Yeah.
up a piece is irrelevant. Like, that's their extra piece, this bishop,
But they
which is
can't do
non
anything
existent.
with it.
Yeah. So we have a very clear, easy plan. But a lot of players think, like, oh, that's a dangerous way to play. The only dangerous thing about this is that it's dangerously fun to play. That's it.
Yeah, right, right. I
So
think
you love it.
I think I would be a bit scared for them doing taking on d4, which is
Hmm.
like a common idea in the French, because I feel like often when they take on there, like I guess it doesn't work here at all, but I feel like they just start swarming on the queen side, and then
Um,
yeah,
so we're not essentially saying white is winning here, but we're saying we have the preconditions necessary to build a strong, successful king side attack, to set it
mm,
up and execute it correctly. And in the meantime, black is expected to cause enough counterplay on the other side. So they will do pawn breaks on this side, weaken our structure from here, put pressure on it with pieces, and it's our job to hold on to it while attacking. And that's a difficult task, much more difficult than it sounds. So it's not like black is losing already from here or something.
you have a question from King in the chat, which is a pretty strong player. I think it's like, aren't you like around 2000 Chesscom or something? Um, he wrote, well, if I reroute my pieces, but opponent pieces are defending as well, how do you push the position or how to wait it out
Good
so that
question.
they make a weakness?
Yeah, so let's say we go for our attack, we're rerouting just like we showed, and they also reroute. So like they have defensive pieces too. But here's where the space advantage comes into play. That's the whole point of the space advantage, to say, hey, we're going to have some pieces like around here, let's say this area, and their defensive pieces, because their pawn structure is so, they have a space disadvantage. All they can work with is the blue things, like these squares. So automatically, our pieces should be more active, and their pieces should be more cramped by one another. To give you a concrete example, 97 is a typical defensive maneuver to reroute to f5, g6. So they need 97 as a move. But where does the bishop go? You might say f8, but that's where the rook is after castling. So like it's all very cramped because of that space disadvantage. So that's why space is a serious prerequisite to build an
Yeah.
attack. As we saw in our second position, we didn't have these ones. We didn't have our main attacking pawn. So that's why I'm saying it was much more difficult, because they had access to moves that they otherwise wouldn't, like knight f6 in this variation that we showed, like a quick example line, basically. Knight f6, and suddenly we're saying black is like under pressure, sure, but objectively, if black finds the right sequence, they're completely okay. And they don't
Mm.
have to find anything special, by the way. They just have to play g6, blunting
Mm.
out our bishop completely. And the more we trade, the less power our attack carries.
Yeah.
So let's say we do trade, because what else? Um, how do we continue? This bishop is dead. F5 is very hard to play because they have enough pressure in the center. Again, main counterplay to a wing attack is a central attack. So black is objectively completely okay, but white
Mm.
is the one with attacking chances.
Mm. Mm.
So the reason they're okay is because they have the move knight f6. And why do they
Yeah.
have this? Because we don't have the space in that.
Yeah.
So it's all very much connected, basically. But that is a very good question. I'm
Makes
happy
sense.
that that was asked. And our third position, as I said before, is with a fully open center. Let's remove these pawns as well. That's my fifth chapter. Let's just switch to it. There we go. Is the king side attack possible here? Nope. Absolutely never.
Mm.
Furthermore, if you try it, if you go h4, g4, knight g3, all the things that we did just now, you will lose the game. That actually backfires. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to try it, maybe it works. No, the more you go into that, the further you commit to that, the more you weaken your position. So let's say you go with pawns, for example, you have to adjust to the situation. It's fully open. So now this is just weakening. Let's see. Again, example variation I prepared, g4, saying, oh, I'm going to pawn storm and castle opposite, right? Just like you would in the other ones, for example.
Yeah.
Castles, h4. Let's go. Queen c7. Just getting out of any queen trade. That's the purpose of queen c7. Because if they play knight f6 immediately, we trade queens, it might not be so bad. So queen c7, if black is an experienced player, bishop g2 development, knight f6, and suddenly these ones are not space-grabbing, strong attacking pawns. They're weaknesses ready to get picked off.
Yeah.
It's like an entire different perspective. Why? Because of the nature of the position, which is completely decided by the center. So here, g5, for example, let's say we keep going, but now this leaves squares behind. Remember, every pawn move that you play leaves squares behind that are weakened. So once you play g5, you weaken f5 and h5. So here, let's say they
Yeah.
can already go knight g4. Our bishop is under attack here. Let's say we play bishop g1 or something. They go bishop f5. They go rook d8. Like their pieces are springing to life because the center is just cleared. There's no pawns. So
Yeah.
less pawns means more piece interaction. And it's white's king who's getting attacked right now, which is hilarious. Because our
Yeah.
whole idea was like, I'm going to attack first.
So, so
So,
what you're saying is like if you're gonna go for these flank attacks, it's kind of a prerequisite to have central control.
correct. So
Mm.
center control, that could even be sometimes with pieces. So for example, let's say they were forced to play c4.
And you
I don't
had
know
an
why.
outpost on
You have
d4.
an outpost on d4, yeah. So suddenly
Yeah.
rook d8 is not a problem whatsoever. So you can sometimes, what I'm trying to say is you can sometimes take control of the center with pieces. So
Yeah.
far, we're just looking at like pawns and openness and closedness of the center. But sometimes pieces are enough to provide you with enough center control to be able to launch that attack. But you need center control.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
So very important condition there because I see a lot of players who just go, oh, I'm just going to attack king, like develop and then attack kingside, no matter what the position is.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not a great strategy,
Yeah.
as we saw from here. So the best strategy for white is to literally just develop fully knight g3 to be able to play bishop d3 castles, just like in the other variation. But very critical, we cannot go for a kingside attack there. Most of
No.
the game will be played on the open files
Mm-hmm.
and for piece activity and for tactical battles and stuff like this. And whoever makes a mistake first loses. But no kingside attacks happening in this fully open position.
I understand.
Wonderful. Any questions from the chat? We're going to have a little pause. Let me just take a look at chat.
We can do a little pause. I think some are
Everything makes
getting
sense so
ready
far.
to like watch Magnus and Niemann, but
Completely understandable.
I will let you know if I have any questions for sure. But I think it's like very clear. It's a prerequisite to have at least some central control, and it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be pawns. You can have some central control with pieces as well. But if you
Mm,
don't have it at all, it just doesn't make sense to go for a king attack.
correct. Correct.
Mm.
And we
And
can
the
even
best
see this.
situation you can have is like if you have full central control, maybe with a strong pawn on e5
Mhm.
and have it closed up. That's like the best situation.
Yeah, this is ideal.
And so
So
King
these are the
says, yeah, don't go insane in open positions. Got it.
yeah, exactly right. And we can even see this in another position. So I put another example where you cannot attack. So this comes from the London system, and Black has a
That
very
explains why I didn't
nice
recognize it.
Black has a very nice move order trick. So if you want to beat the London, what you do is first Queen c7 in order to play Knight bd7. It's a little bit strange, but the whole point is to get it in e5 successfully. And the Queen c7, Knight bd7 guarantees this. The reason this is the
Ooh.
case, it's a bit of a move order trick, a bit off topic, but why not? A lot of players go Knight c6, autopilot, because like, oh, my knight is the best here.
Hmm.
And then after typical London moves, here they try to play e5, so they have to somehow uh, have one more defender of e5, whether that's queen e7, queen c7, or rook e8. But the problem with queen c7 now is that this is a pin,
Mm.
so d takes e5 is just a free pawn.
Yeah.
This is where the idea of this move order trick comes to mind, and I've seen Magnus Carlsen play this in Blitz on YouTube. That's why I researched this. So queen c7 first to be able to play knight bd7, because if you play knight bd7 here, that's a blunder. You lose the bishop. So queen c7 first, and then knight bd7, castles, castles, takes, e5. This is like a theoretical line, doesn't matter. But the point is that we're looking at positions from which you cannot attack. And from white, this will be one such position because they are lacking in space. So black is the one with the space advantage.
So
They have
black
two
can
pawns
attack.
on the fourth, so black can attack, correct. Um, they have two pawns on the fourth, we have no pawns on the fourth. This is our fourth. So again, we're in a space disadvantage. But
Yeah.
you would be surprised to learn that I found some games on Lichess in the database that featured king h2, rook h1, king g1, saying, "Oh, I'm gonna attack. Let's do it." And then like,
Well,
"Oh,
it's
knight g5,
important
check."
to have hopes and dreams.
Agreed.
You have a question, by the way, from Meek Meek.
Yeah.
How does your time and your opponent's time affect your decision to attack? So I guess some
Interesting.
players might be afraid. I don't know if that accounts for Meek Meek, but some players might be afraid to attack if they're like low on time. Maybe they're afraid to complicate things and heighten the chance of blundering, maybe.
Makes sense. So the first thing I would say is that it depends on the time situation, like who is in time trouble. If you are in time trouble but your opponent is not, then avoid attacks because attacks make things complicated inevitably. So all you want is like a simple, nice position trade down to like a rook endgame in which you can make every move within like 5 seconds. So
Yeah.
you have to adapt to the situation. You're not going to go for like a crazy attack here. Let's again look at a position where it's possible. I would be much more hesitant to go h4, g4, and whatever if I know that my king is going to get wide open long term. When you're in time trouble, having a safe king is very, very important. It allows
Yeah.
you to play much faster and risk-free. So I'd be more hesitant to play this, and I would just play maybe, okay, I'm not going to be in time trouble in this position, but you get the point. I would just play normal, safe, simple chess. That's
And
if you are in time trouble, your
yeah.
opponent is not.
And vice versa. If you have a lot of time and your opponent does not, maybe it could be good to do the opposite.
Exactly. Then you want to complicate it. And then that's the imbalance. But if the situation is balanced, you both have equal time. Again, that's two cases. Either you're both in time trouble or you're both at a decent amount of time. So if you're both in time trouble, you might want to attack because it's your moves as the attacker are going to be much more intuitive than their defensive moves. When you attack, you just go, oh, let's go. You push pawns, you reroute pieces. Like you don't have to make it too complicated. But for your opponent, it's going to be much more complicated because if they mess up, they lose the game instantly. If you mess up, you lose your attack. Oh no. We're playing chess. So the margin for error is much bigger for you, is what I'm trying to say, as the attacker,
Yeah. And then
if that makes sense.
Kayudo is also writing in chat, most of the time I like to castle the opposite side of my opponent when I can, then attack my opponent's castle king.
That's what I do.
Don't we all?
Yeah. Good strategy. Keep doing it. Keep doing
Yeah.
it. And the second situation, the last one we haven't covered, you both have enough time. This is where you can really think about your attack and make an objective decision. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of attacks work much better when you're both low on time. So in Blitz, I would be much less hesitant to pull the trigger on some sort of attack because, again, it's much easier to attack than defend. So, and my opponent doesn't really have time to calculate, so it's much more profitable long term to attack. Whereas in classical, if you sacrifice a piece for an attack, your opponent has all the time in the world to figure it out. Chess is a game of mistakes. If you give your opponent enough time, they will calculate everything precisely. So if you want to go for some bishop takes h7 Greek gift, and you're not sure when it works, when it doesn't, and so on, if it's blitz, go for it if you think that it works. If it's classical, think about it.
Maybe not.
Probably not.
And I also think, like, on the topic of sacrifice and attacking, I think this is just my opinion. I'm not sure if you agree, Sandro, but I just feel like when you are a beginner or you're an intermediate player, I think it's like important to experiment with the sacrificing and attacking, and experiment with, like, why did it not work in this situation? Why did it work here? And gain that experience. And I think it's like important to be brave enough to do some bad sacrifices just to be able to understand and learn why did it not work, and also maybe attack from bad positions if you don't recognize it's a bad position, because then you learn from it later. So it's like a bit important to try, I think, because I think many like beginner and intermediate players, they adapt this turtle playing style where they like keep to themselves on their side of the board because maybe they had some bad experiences early with, the scholar's mate or queen coming out early, and they got a bit scared. So I think it's important to just try to get out of your shell and just dare to experiment.
Correct. That's what I always recommend to my students as well. And that's the way I learned personally as well when it comes to sacrificing a pawn for the initiative.
Yeah.
Like, that's a really difficult thing to completely grasp when it comes to exchange sacrificing. Like, rook on f1 takes the knight on f6 for some reason. Whether that's tactical or positional exchange sacrifices, like, these are all things you have to grasp an intuition for. And it's very important not to shy away from them. If your long-term goal is chess improvement, not rating, then it's very easy to do so because you see the big picture and you're like, okay, even if this fails, I'm going to analyze it properly and see, hey, maybe I overestimated this, maybe I underestimated this, so that you can adapt for next time and make a better decision next time. And you're going closer and closer and closer to getting that gut feeling, that intuition that you require for future games and tournaments. So
Yeah.
definitely agree, experiment as much as possible.
I just also have to say it was quite a fun comment. King said it was like chess PTSD, which is a bit funny. But okay, let's move
Yeah,
on. This was a long digression.
awesome.
King has some more questions. Let's get back to them later. So let's just move on for now.
Sure. So we talked about the hints when it works, and we saw when it doesn't work. Basically, this is our position where our main goal should be to reclaim the space. So c4 pawn break, e4 pawn break. So try to somehow make these work. So moves like queen c2, queen e2, like make these pawn breaks work essentially. That should be our main goal, not just randomly, oh, kingside attack. We have zero hints to tell us we should attack kingside. We don't have enough piece activity. We don't have the space advantage. We have nothing. So we cannot ever go for kingside attack here. Okay,
Yeah.
next cool thing. Sorry, we're going to say something?
No, it's just like yeah, it's very helpful that you emphasize the central control and that yeah, this
Yes,
is kind of the plan here to challenge that.
agreed. Agreed. So the next thing I want to talk about is how do you, from the start of the game, how do you get into a position like this? Because so far we talked about, oh, when you're in this position, try to recognize hints that you either have or have not an attack. But how do you actively manipulate the position to get into a position where that's possible? Let's take a look. So sometimes it's going to be an aggressive opening that takes you there, like a gambit type opening, which already gives you enough of these hints as a part of the opening. So, for example, the King's Gambit accepted. Let's just see a quick game of how this went. So the point is that we sacrifice a pawn to take an enemy pawn away from the center to increase our center control. So this
Yes.
e pawn went to the side. So we have two pawns in the center. Very,
Yeah.
very strong. This is called the full center, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And now we can just continue with normal logical development for the price of a pawn. So black is saying, hey, sure, you can have everything you want, but I'm up material. Let's see how this develops.
Looks great.
So they're trying to hold on to this pawn really hard. G7, G3. And now white is trying to break down this pawn chain, allowing their pieces to just absolutely tear apart
Oh,
F7.
this looks so fun.
G4, it is. It is. Knight H4, F3. And now already a sacrifice could be brewing here. Knight takes f3, pawn takes, and queen takes. But unfortunately, we have some problems with d4.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little bit early. So first, some piece development. Knight c6, bishop e3, bishop f6, and now is the moment. So knight takes f3 was played. Again, another material sacrifice, but look at the resulting position. We have everything we want except material.
Oh, this looks so juicy.
Beautiful center control. Pieces optimally placed. I could not draw them better. And we're just going to absolutely crash through here. And development advantage was our hint number 5, I believe, and we definitely have it here. We have many more pieces developed than our opponent.
Yeah, and I think like you sacrifice the knight there, which might be scary for some players, but it's like your opponent is not playing with the majority of their pieces. It's just like they're not in the game. So technically, if you look at it that way, you're kind of up and not
Yeah,
down in a way.
it's very easy to get caught up in material because that's something that you can like see, you can count, like it's concrete. But let's say that I told you, hey, this rook is not allowed to move, like it's just glued down to the square. Then you're not down a knight, you're up material. So you're up a rook for a knight, technically. You're up the exchange at that point. But this rook may as well not move right now. It's not going to be alive for a very long time, probably. So it's very easy to get caught up in material, but overall, the position should be looked as one. So let's see how this game continues, because it's really fun. So after bishop e6, we take it with a very concrete purpose. F takes opens up the weakest diagonal in chess,
Yes.
this one. So we're already looking at queen h5. But before that, I think e5 was played first. And this is also instructive. We're down material, so it's probably like, oh, I don't want to give up more material. The main thing is to open up the enemy king here right now. So we could give a check, but they would just run away like this.
Yeah.
So we need to open up the position further for even more power right now. And we're using the fact that this bishop cannot move because of queen f7 checkmate.
And then you open up the d file for the other rook, maybe, so you can get the last piece into the game.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, we're not going to learn how to attack, but just demonstrating this for educational purposes to see how this develops from our great position. How do we actually push forward? So yeah, the d file will play a huge role as well, well noticed. So after d takes e5, of course, d takes e5. Knight takes e5, they have to at least try to save their piece. And now we have this position. So queen h5 check. Knight f7 was played, so they're just, holding on, building a bunker, and trying to survive with their extra material. But we have every single piece in the fight after rook a d1, queen c8. By the way, queen e7 looks like the most logical move, but gets the queen trapped after bishop c5, defended by the queen,
Yikes.
which is hilarious. Like, absolutely. They have extra material. They have so much extra material. It doesn't matter. The knight cannot come here on the count of the pin, and the queen is trapped on e7. Absolutely
I love
mind-boggling.
this. This is beautiful. And I think like that pawn break in the center was so instructive, because the problem with queen h5 check was that the king could run away, but now you have created an electric fence in the d file, so it's not possible anymore.
Exactly right. Yeah. So we got to open up the space to be able to utilize our pieces. Again, less pawns means more piece interaction. So e5 takes, giving up another pawn, so we're down to like a knight and a pawn, and it doesn't matter whatsoever.
And
so that's why
black
queen
is
c8 was
just
played.
and black is just an absolute material hoarder.
Yeah. But their extra material is not ever going to come into the game.
Nope.
Knight e4. So our last piece comes into play. Again, really instructive. A lot of players, when they attack, they just look at what they have currently. But a higher rated player always looks at what they don't have in the attack, and how can they bring even more firepower, more, closer. So knight e4, because the only piece not in the attack is this one. Knight e4, king e7. What's not in the attack right now? This bishop. It's looking at offside. Bishop c5 check. Every piece joins the party. It's so cool. Knight d6, because it's no longer pinned. But we have a 3 versus 2 going on, so we can take, and take with the rook or bishop. That's how it played out. And the king is just getting absolutely hunted here, and this is a forced checkmate. They cannot come here because of the coverage. So king c7, and this is a forced mate. Queen c5, king b8, bishop d6. They have to throw the queen between. We just take it.
That was a nice one.
Checkmate. What a game.
That was a really nice one. Who played this? It kind of reminded me a bit of Morphe.
I'm not sure. Honestly, I didn't write it down, unfortunately. But we can look it up
Yeah.
with the PGN
Very
later.
interesting. It wasn't yours?
I don't believe so. No, I don't play King's Gambit, so definitely not mine. Yeah, I just remember how I started. But awesome, very instructive in terms of setting up the attack. So sometimes we have to give up material, but we shouldn't shy away from this if we have activity, center, initiative, development advantage. Like, we have almost all of the hints mentioned, and sometimes only 2 or 3 are enough.
Yeah, and
So
what
really,
I like,
really cool example.
Yeah, and what I like about this is like, okay, they have a extra pawn, but they played g4. So the king is never going kingside, and it takes a long time for them to castle queenside because they need to develop 3 pieces.
Yes, it's wonderful. And white just wins a spectacular game. So that's from start to finish. And the last thing that I want to show you was really cool, in my opinion. I put together steps of attacking. So this is what I actually do from the start of a chess game. I think there's 5 of them, if I'm not mistaken. I put together a compilation of 3 of my games online. From start to finish, in all 3 games, I followed the exact same step-by-step pattern of how to set up a position and execute the attack from first move. So let me first copy-paste.
Can't wait to hear the steps.
Yeah,
and
6 of them,
apparently. Hopefully.
Yeah, let's do Skype. Actually, I can post it. Let's see if it works. Wonderful. There we go.
Yeah.
So all the steps are here. So let's take a look at them first in isolation, and then we're going to see the games. So step 1, lock up the center to make wing attacks stronger. And also I put explanations in the brackets. That's something we talked about earlier. The strongest counterplay to a wing attack is a central counterattack. So step 1, lock up the center. Step 2, attack the wing by expending pawns and rerouting pieces to that side of the board. Step 3, initiate the attack, usually with a pawn break. Step 4, add attackers, trade off defenders. So this would be like the main thing of the attack. And once you have enough pressure, you have tactics. So step 5 is tactics time. And step 6 is just finish the job or convert the material advantage or checkmate. That's it. So let's take a look at the steps. I'm playing black in this game. Let me see if I can flip the board. Wonderful. Against a Croatian friend of mine. And let's see. So step 1 was close up the center. So I'm just, first of all, developing my pieces, of course. But I'm always keeping in mind that I want to close up the center. So any pawn trade, I'm very likely to decline by pushing past. Let's take a look. Normal development, nothing special to see.
Oh, you're castling short.
6, yeah, very cool stuff. This is like my opening sort of setup. And let's see the first moment of the game. By the way, I should mention rook b8 is like a strange looking move, but the point is that this
Yeah.
bishop exerts a lot of pressure
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And later on, I'm going to want to move my knight. So it makes sense. D4. And as I said before, I'm looking to close out up the center, meaning every pawn break I'm going to push past. E4. Step
This
1,
kind
lock up the center.
of this kind of reminds me about some ideas you can get in the King's Indian sometimes. This
Yeah,
structure.
yeah, very common. And then it's the same in the King's Indian. Basically, you're trying to attack kingside, opponent tries to attack queenside. Indicated by the pawn chains, once again, so straightforward to understand. Right now, the center is still mobile, so it's not very clear. But once the center is locked up, we're going to see that relatively easily. So their knight was under attack, they just moved 92. And there's a little bit of a nuance to this, because it seems like d5 just closes down the center immediately, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that after d5, they play c4. So you have to keep in mind, they want to open it
Yeah.
up because they realize they're about to get attacked.
Do you play like b5?
b5 is a good idea, but
But it's
I,
bad.
it's not
Doesn't.
very consistent because there's other factors at play here, like a4, for example.
Yeah.
So they're gonna maybe they use the a pawn to distract your b pawn and then do c4 again.
Yeah.
Or after c4 takes take. So first of all, they have to defend against this. Let's say they play rook b1, and then they can play c4 next move.
Yeah.
After take, this bishop is defended.
Yeah.
So I was mainly considering the move c6 to prepare d5. So I wanted to move my knight already.
But you want
97,
that on the king side either way,
c65.
right?
Yeah, so this is a part of the rerouting as well. So I had enough experience in these positions to know that my whole plan is this. Close up the center, 97, g5, knight g6. That was the initial part of rook b8 as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would have the hindsight to play this move if I was first time in this position. But I've had
Yeah.
hundreds of games here, so I know how it usually goes, and I've gotten in trouble for this a lot of times.
Yeah.
So this is the result of that. So it requires a little bit of experience, but 97 to play c6 to safely play d5, so that when they take, I take back with the pawn, stabilizing the center forever.
Mm.
And that's very cool because let's see the alternative quickly. So let's say I go d5, they go c4. Let's see how this plays out a little bit past this point. I played something, doesn't really matter what, let's say 97 now, but now I have to take with the piece, automatically meaning that my center is a little bit more shaky, mainly the e4 pawn. So
Yeah.
once I'm faced with a well-timed f3, the reason I say well-timed is because right now it's a blunder because of 93.
The fork.
So they have to defend this somehow. Let's say 94. Well-timed f3 forces me to give up my center control almost completely.
Yeah.
And that's problematic if I want to go for a kingside attack.
Yeah.
But if I have a pawn here instead of a knight, as in the game, let's see the game. So 97, c6, d5. Right now, if they go takes, f3 is not a problem. This is rock solid pawn. So I still have that control to be able to go g5, knight g6, completely ignoring f3. Which is really small difference seemingly, but a very important difference in terms of setting up the attack. So that's why I preempt this d5 with c6. And after d5, my opponent surprises me and plays c5. I'm like, wait. Usually they have like a lot of pressure here, forcing me to like
Yeah.
stay here with my pieces instead of committing those pieces to the attack. So I put as a side note, step 1 definitely complete on the right here. So
Yeah.
g5,
He kind of helped you.
a little bit, but he's basically relying on his queenside attack. That's what he's saying with this move. He says, I don't need the pressure here. I'm just going to go b5 pawn break and cause enough play here, which we're going to see how it plays out. So step 2 was attack the wing with an expansion of pawns, because again, we need space to find the good squares. So g5. And then they're going to try counter here. g5, knight g6. And I'm also kind of preparing the pawn break f4. Very important. So that's going to be step 3. b5, mainly when your opponent tries to do like an opposite side attack, you want to ignore them as much as possible because every move that you don't play here is a
Yeah.
move that you can play here.
Yeah.
A lot of players go too hard into defense on this side, losing valuable time.
It's kind of like when... Is it kind of like when you do opposite side castling and you're pawn storming? If you start reacting to
Yes,
the opponent's pawn storm and then you're just getting
exactly.
your own delayed.
Exactly right. Yeah, it's exactly like that. So generally speaking, when you have in chess opposite sides of attack, opposite attacking areas, you want to go kingside, they want to go queenside, or vice versa. Any move that's defensive should be really considered carefully
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's a move lost on the other side. So
Yeah.
ignore as much as possible. Valuable tip. So I go f4, rook e1. This will be step 3. Initiate the attack. Usually make contact with the opponent. Step 2 was just like rear out, get pieces ready. Step 3 was like make contact with the opponent, trade pieces, get in there, usually with a pawn break.
Yeah.
f4. One. Now, step 4 was add attackers, trade off defenders. So once you've made contact with the opponent, now it's time to get the pieces that are not in the attack into the attack. So here comes queen d7, and then removing defenders would be bishop h3. That's the only defender they have right now. So I go queen d7, bishop h3. They try queenside stuff, bishop h3. Now it's maybe best for them to like keep the defenders on, like bishop h1, but they traded into me, which I believe is a mistake.
Yeah.
Because I just get my queen in, of course. Queen e2 was played to try and trade queens, because then my attack is seemingly over. But here come the knight. Here comes the knight together with the rook. Like, add attackers, remove defenders on every single move. And after f3, trying to defend with the second rank, I should also mention queen f1 unfortunately fails to queen h2. So with knight g4, I threaten queen h2.
Yeah, so you're threatening checkmate, so they don't have time. They have to.
Right, and to get back into the previous question, I'm getting pieces. I'm getting attackers here. Why can't they just get defenders here? Knight f1. Unfortunately, f3. And queen g2 is checkmate. So they have to move the queen. I mate on g2. How does this play a role? Because notice that both the queen and the knight want to go to f1. That's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
So all their pieces will be somehow blocked or have poor coordination. Because I have a lot of space, they don't. They're just working with like a few squares.
They're in a traffic jam. They can't move at all.
Exactly. Yeah. So both of them want to come to f1 simultaneously, but there's not enough room. So there's no defense. That means they have to try f3, but now it's tactics time. Statistically speaking, one of these variations will work. And I found which one. I found g takes f takes g. And the point is I sacrifice my knight, but only temporarily because of rook f2. So that f pawn moves out of the way.
That's a nice one. F2. That's a very nice one.
Yeah, and either checkmate or loss of the queen. And this is where step 6 comes in, finish the job. So here I'm just up material. So now it's up to me to convert. So either checkmate or just peacefully convert, whichever. Unfortunately, I regret to say I missed the mate in 2 here. Chad, give it a try. Force checkmate in a few moves. 3 moves, actually.
I'm gonna try on it as well. Like, immediately it looks like you need to bring in the rook. Makes sense. But let me calculate it.
Yeah, take your time. I'm going to take a look at shot.
Queen takes h2 maybe. And king f1 and rook f8.
Final answer.
Yes.
Nice, well done. That's the one. Queen h2, let's just see it on the board. King f1 only legal move.
Yeah.
And rook f8.
And it's mate in 3 because of knight f3.
Knight
but that's so stupid.
That's the one. In the game, I played the chat continuation, which is rook f8 immediately. Because I was like, oh, bring all the pieces to the attack. I was still in principles instead of concrete calculation.
Yeah, but that was the first. That's a very, like, it almost plays itself, natural. I would say.
Yeah. I took like 1 second on this move. I went from 0.53 to 0.52.
Yeah.
But objectively, I should have just calculated. But anyway, I saw that this was good enough. Seeing as king e2, trying to escape, runs into queen g4. Very important, like when they try to escape with the king, don't just give any check. Try to give a check which covers the escape square as well. So queen g4 because it covers the escape square.
You sometimes get this. You sometimes get this theme in like chess.com puzzles.
Yeah,
where like you have to give the right check that blocks the escape route down the diagonal.
Yeah. Very common in games as well. So here they have to go knight f3. Funny story, by the way. It's a blitz game. I thought this was checkmate, and I was very surprised to see that chess.com didn't end the game. And then I saw knight f3, only legal move. And I'm just picking up all the material. So I just went, not even taking here, I went queen g2, picking up this one.
Yeah.
King d1, pick up this one, and everything they have is hanging. So that was fun. And I didn't feel like actually calculating. So in this position, I just went bishop d4, just break open this and something will happen.
Yeah.
Classic title player thinking, you know,
Yeah.
here, and rook d3, and I'm just picking up everything. And they
You're
resigned,
a
I think, soon
poor
after.
opponent. You're like annihilating them.
And that's game.
Rest in
So
peace, my bro.
from step, so all the steps we're seeing, let's just quickly scroll through it. So step one was lock up the center. So step one was complete here. The center is deadlocked up. Okay, this is even extra, but even without this, it would be the same game. Even if they played something normal, I would still do the exact same moves. They would just have a little bit more pressure here. So step one was that. Step two, increase the space on the side where you want to attack and rear out the pieces there. Step three, initiate the attack, usually a pawn break to open up the lines so that your pieces can actually get in.
Just
We
quick
don't
question.
want. Sorry?
Just quick question.
Yeah.
It's like make contact. Do you need to do that after rerouting all your pieces or like most of them? Or what is the
That's
timing there?
usually position dependent. So sometimes you'll be able to play the move f4 without knight g6. But in this particular position, I just didn't want to deal with the double capture and somehow they hold on to this or something. That would be a little bit annoying, so I just played the safe route. Objectively, I think f4 here is completely fine as well. Let's say f4, the only risk of doing this is if they take and try to hold on, but I don't think they can hold on here. This is way too weak. So for example here, knight e2, and I just attack it one more time with knight h5.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Everything attacks this, and it should fall. So this works as well. So this it's not
But like,
necessarily like in
no.
stone, but
Like reroute pieces and then make contact.
yeah. Sometimes you can make contact and then reroute pieces. Up to you. Sometimes this will be seen as a waste of a move because this attack is overwhelmingly fast, so you need to go quick. Position dependent, essentially. There's no absolute rule. Yeah.
Makes sense.
So step 2 and 3 are interchangeable. F4, and then step 4 was right. Add attackers, remove defenders. So identify which of their pieces are actual defenders. A lot of people will say, "Oh, the rook is defending the king," but the fact that they're defending the king's square means absolutely nothing. We're looking for defenders of like these squares, you know. But I get this all the time, like, "Oh, the king is defended 3 times."
Yeah, but
Technically true.
that's actually very funny.
Yeah.
They're defending the king square.
Yeah. So add attackers, remove defenders, and build up the pressure. The pieces can always come closer. There's going to be new attackers until you get that overwhelming tactic because the pieces are so well coordinated that there just has to be something. That's what we say.
And this is like where the quote tactics often emerges from superior positions come in.
Yes.
You got another question from King.
I'm listening.
I wonder what is the plan if he had gone bishop h1. Still feels better for black with all the activity, but the execution gets tricky.
Good question. Yeah. So again, every attack is different. You have to calculate. It's not going to be this straightforward. Like they're not going to take you every time. They're going to put up a fight. So bishop h1 is a way to put up a fight. So let's see. Nothing stands out to me immediately, except the fact that I could just play f3 right now and just kill this piece forever. And now I could literally just transfer over to the queen side and just say, hey, after the open b file or something like that, I could just play a normal game on the queen side, up a piece.
Yeah.
That's a possibility. But let's say that I want to continue my attack. I would most likely play f3 with the idea of targeting h2, the weakness. Because right now, I took out these
sacrifice a
squares.
knight on it.
Most likely, yeah. So what I was looking at initially was queen g4, queen h5, knight g4. Queen here, knight here. And then I play like bishop g2 or bishop f1. Not bishop f1 because of knight f1, neatly protecting this. So bishop g2. And then I'm threatening queen takes h2, mate, for example. So queen here and knight g4. Maybe knight g4, knight h2 also works, but that's a little bit more risky. This just seems safer, and it seems like I have enough time, again, because the position is so dead closed. I have all the time in the world to set up whatever I like. So sometimes the solution will be something like this. Sometimes it will be like knight h4, and they cannot take because you just put a rook on the g file, and that's game over. And if they don't take, then you just keep on infiltrating further. So again, very position dependent, but I would, in this particular position, play queen g4. Let me just see. I played f3, so it's white to move. Let's play out a typical variation. Let's say they do some queenside stuff. Queen b3, g4, bishop a3 to go rook b1. They try to do queenside stuff, but there's basically no defending this. If they play knight f1, I take it and then crash through to h2. If not, then I play bishop g2. They take me, I
Yeah.
just ignore that to play queen h2.
Yeah.
So the answer is position dependent, but in this one I would play like this.
Yeah, but you're kind of like still following the principles still that you outlined, because you're
Mhm.
continuing grabbing territory and you're continuing bringing more attackers, basically.
Yes, yes. Let me just take a look at the chat quickly. Knight g4 with some sack, then pawn trade instead of f3. Also a decent choice, yeah. Because sometimes f3, it was just my first intuition because I saw this sequence, but sometimes f3 would be like a blunder because like you're closing down the position too much and your pieces want open files and stuff. So definitely considering would be f takes g, taking immediately, or king says knight g4 and then knight sack and then pawn trade with like a double check, knight sack on f2. So this will also be extremely powerful, and I expect game ending very soon also.
There's a
So
lot
there's
of
usually multiple ways to attack.
yeah, there's a lot of fun things to ponder, basically.
Yeah, definitely. If there's only one way to attack, that's not like an attack in that sense. It's more like a tactic.
Yes.
If there's only like one line, but when it comes to like proper strategic attacking, there's multiple angles, areas, ways, whatever you like.
That's a very good nuance, actually, to distinguish between that, because you actually have strategic attacking as well. I think many people on the lower levels thinks like there's only like one way to attack.
Right. Yeah. And if I don't find this one magical computer variation, I'm losing.
Yeah, and I can
Common misconception.
sometimes fall into that trap and then spend way too much time when in fact all the candidate moves I was thinking about were sound choices.
Yeah.
Just like get upset, what is the perfect one?
Yeah. Yeah. But sometimes you have to be practical and realize, hey, all of them are good. I don't see a concrete difference. So you play one, whichever looks the best, optically, and go on your way. And
Yeah.
sometimes that will mean missing something, but fine. Then you'll learn for next time. So very common trap to get into, but sometimes we have to be practical players. Very good.
Yes,
And
yes.
let's see game number two with the exact same steps. Because you might say, oh, I just took this game and kind of tailored the steps to this game. No, not at all. Like I do this all the time, and I just put three games that I saw were sort of most instructive. Let's take a look. So I'm again playing black. Let's flip against a random online person. But let's see the steps. So again, development to start with. But step one that we're going to pay attention to is closing up the center. This is my trusty classical Dutch that I always play. Um, okay, let's see. So e5, grabbing space. So first of all, I should mention you're never guaranteed in every single position to close up. Like objectively, if your opponent wants to open it up, they will have the chance to. So
Yeah.
it's not like you can absolutely guarantee every single time that you're going to get into close position. That's something that has to happen. But once you have it, it's a good, very good prerequisite for a successful attack. So in this position, nothing is stopping my opponent from taking and reaching a half open center, but it comes with a price of other things usually.
Yeah.
So e3 was played, and I play e4, closing down the e file, halfway
Yeah.
there.
This is kind of like
Five.
similar.
Yeah, kind of similar. So they play c5. In this particular position, they have another c pawn. So c5 is not that committal or something like this because they can still break open the center. Step four. So I'm trying to lock up the center. So ideally, I don't want to have to take back with my queen or something because then my queen could possibly get traded, and without queens, it's really hard to attack. So I wanted to play c6 initially here, but I think something was bothering me about c6 if I remember. Essentially, I didn't play c6 for some reason. I can't think of it right now. I played bishop e6 instead. When they took, I took back with the bishop. The bishop is just a better pawn, so I don't mind.
Mm.
b8, 97. Gotta get pieces out. Don't forget about development. c4, c6. So I also built a pawn chain, except one of those is a bishop, but fine. Bishop d2, queen e8. So we locked up the center. That was step one. Sometimes you can even use a piece,
You
as
know,
you can see.
I got quite fascinated by what you said there. Like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, I don't have the d pawn, but the bishop is essentially just a better pawn, so I don't mind. And I was just like, huh, I never thought about that. But it's like
yeah,
doing a good job of like the pawn's big brother or something.
basically. So I think even if I played c6 and took back, I think it would have been fine. I just chose this instead.
Hmm.
And step two, from before we said, was attack the wing with an expansion of pawns and rerouting pieces. One thing that I could mention is that you don't necessarily have to include pawns. You could literally just go queen e8, queen h5, rook lift, and just attack with pieces, for example.
Hmm. Hmm.
So the question of do you attack with pawns, do you attack with pieces is very, again, position dependent. Sometimes you will find you might play g5 on autopilot and then realize, hey, f4 is near impossible to play.
Yeah.
So that g5 pawn is just weakening and weakening your king, blocking your pieces.
Yeah.
So again, some things are dependent. Knight a5 was played. This is the interesting thing. Also, whenever you attack, it's very easy to get caught up in, oh, I'm just going to attack and it's all going to work out perfectly. But stopping counterplay first is one of the most important things. Also,
Is
when you
that
attack,
like queen c8?
queen c8
Yes,
exactly.
that is kind of like a multi-purpose move because it defends b7,
Hmm.
uh, and you avoid any like rook on the seventh rank, which would be a party killer. But like
Yeah.
at least you have the queen on the diagonal uh, towards
Right.
the king, right?
Yeah. So maybe this is going to be very useful in the future if I go g5 f4 somehow, and then
Hmm.
bishop e3, bishop h. So there's some utility in the diagonal perhaps as well. But the key thing here is that literally previous move I played queen e8. This was a bit careless on my
Yeah,
part.
yeah,
But sometimes you just have to admit your mistake and say, hey, I'm not going to let my ego play the moves for me. I have to admit my mistake and say, okay, I messed up. Objectively, it was a better move to play here, rook f6, so that I can meet this with this and have the exact same position, but I have another attacking move already played. So I made a
that
slight inaccuracy here,
yeah.
no big deal.
That's also very important because sometimes you get caught up in your ego and you want to like prove that your move was
Yeah,
not bad, but sometimes it's just you just have to go back.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's very easy to say, oh, my attack works because,
Yeah.
I thought of it. And then there's lines first. Queen c8, rook f c1, and now I can take my time, g5, f1, and here I make an interesting choice, which I'm not sure I would do again. I went g4. And my logic was f4 is going to be really, really hard to play, and it's going to inevitably open up the center a lot, mainly the e file, and allow counterplay. So I didn't really like the idea of f4. And I saw an alternative way to attack, which is g4, which is counterintuitive because you're closing things down, seemingly. But actually, I'm grabbing the f3 square as an outpost. So my idea was like maybe reroute a knight to f3, g4. So
Mm.
this stops them from any f3, f4 ever, and also grabs this square and stops them from h3. Because once I build the battery, queen here and rook here, they can just play h3. And it's like, oh, if I play g4, they play h4, no big deal. But
Yeah.
if I play g4, I fix this pawn in place. So now this is a target for my attack. So I'm not sure if I would do this again, but it was a really interesting idea. I wanted to give it a shot. Again, experimenting, what we talked about earlier.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Worked out pretty
Important.
good. Bishop c4, they're trying to open up my center. They want to go take, and when I take back, they go c6. And all of their queenside attack is ready to just infiltrate into my position. So that's a
Yeah.
pretty serious threat. I have to address that. Knight f6, replacing the bishop with a knight. Fine. Take, but the position is still closed. Even though it's a knight blocking, fine, works.
Mm.
Knight c4, trying to go e5. I don't really see much value in that, so I just let him. F6, f4, the first actual mistake of the game. Not sure what happened here, but they just missed en passant.
Ooh.
I just got to play en passant. So I think that they thought that they have like more control of these squares, they close down more files, they have like the second rank defense.
Do you think they forgot the ampersand?
I'm 50-50. To this day, I have no idea because it's a random person. So there's a chance there's like a brilliant sacrifice to have second rank open for defense, and there's a chance that they didn't see this as a legal move. So we'll never know. But I was like, okay, that has to be my best move, and we'll see what happens. And now we're continuing like nothing happened. So again, rerouting pieces, add attackers, remove defenders. Let's see.
What
Uh,
about it? Yeah.
sorry?
No, no. I'm just thinking out loud. Sorry.
Okay, all right.
I
Uh,
was just like
all right.
thinking, what about e3?
E3 was hanging, but I believe this was a really fast-paced game. Oh, yeah, I don't know if you can see it on stream, but I have 25 seconds, he has 28 seconds.
Ah, okay, okay.
It's like either like a bullet or blitz.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was
I
like a
just missed it.
button
Yeah,
or
it is
something.
hanging.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I don't see any reason why not to take it. Bishop f6, queen e8. Again, rerouting pieces while keeping an eye out on their counterplay as well.
Mm-hmm.
H4, g6. Now I pin this one, so I'm threatening here.
Ooh.
They unpin. Whenever you're pinned, unpin as soon as possible. Very important.
Yeah.
Queen g4. I'm just coming closer and closer and closer, and something will happen. And here we go. Everything is defended, but it's defended too perfectly. So there's a tactic called throwing a bomb, f4. Everything is defended too perfectly, meaning that they're barely holding on to everything. Like this knight is defending here, this is defending here against this. G pawn is stopping my infiltration over here, so everything is perfect. So if I just put a bomb in there, throwing a bomb, I think it's called, something will crack.
I
And
never heard that. That is so fascinating. Like everything is
yeah,
defended too perfectly, so just throw a bomb.
yeah,
Can
just
that
like
like
dislodge
be
something.
that can be like a sacrifice?
Hmm. Most likely
Mm.
a sacrifice, yeah.
Like this one.
Um, like this pawn, for example. So if they go g takes f, I'm just infiltrating, queen g2. Yeah, I'm trading queens, but the end game is just overwhelmingly good for me.
Yeah.
They're never going to contest this. They can't go rook b2 tactically. They can take on e3. And I have the second rank. I cut off their king. I have a pass pawn on f3. I may just double up and checkmate. There's so
Yeah.
many ideas here.
Yeah.
Black is just winning. So that's why they didn't go for this. They went for e takes f, giving me the d4 pawn.
And
That
now the
was the one.
bishop is in.
Now these are connected passes on the third rank
Oh,
in the medal game.
this looks
Oh
horrible.
my. E2 is coming unstoppable.
Yeah.
Um, and then bishop takes d4. Like add attackers, remove defenders. That will be this. So I just added so many attackers that there's no way to hold on. So
Mm.
e2, they already have to give the queen. Step
Yeah.
5 is tactics time. And
Yeah.
step 6, finish the job. I didn't even take the queen because I saw checkmate.
Yeah, that's a pretty one.
That was game. So it
That
started
is,
with closing on the center, attacking.
yeah,
Again, same steps.
that's
That's what I
really
love it.
cool. Okay,
That's what I love about it.
I want to see if I can remember, okay, the steps.
Sure. I'm
Um,
glad you said that because the last example I have, I didn't put the steps in.
oh, okay.
That's
But
actually what I had in mind. So we're thinking just the same.
look up the
Uh,
center, because then the
yes.
flank attacks are more powerful.
Hmm.
And then you need to expand into the opponent's territory with
Good.
your pawns. And then you need to get your pieces to the side of the flank you are expanding.
Correct.
And then you need to make contact. Preferably with like a pawn, like initiate a pawn break.
Mm,
And then you need to just continue adding more attackers and removing defenders.
yes.
And
Until you have a
then,
tactic.
yeah, when your position is like overwhelmingly strong, there's tactics time.
Yes. Wonderful. Well done. Let's take a look at the last. So this is the last example I have for today. The last game in which I do the exact same thing. So let's try to recognize them because I didn't put the moments here.
I know we're
So
like getting short on time, but you had one more question from King regarding the other
yeah,
game.
go for it.
He wonders if knight takes b7, ba6 was possible instead of bc4.
Instead of bc4, let's take a look. Let me see. So instead of bc4, where was this? So I
Not
took the
sure.
knight. They had to go. Let me take a look at chat quickly. I want to see that.
Wonder if
I
knight
wonder if knight takes
takes
b7.
knight takes b7.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. That was later. So instead of bishop c4, yeah. So that's when they rerouted the bishop to trade for mine. So here, instead of bishop to c4, king is saying knight takes b7, and then after rook takes b7, bishop a6 pin, like a tactical resource to initiate the attack. So let's take a look at that. So I believe knight takes b7, rook takes b7. Here I can answer with this. Rook takes b1. They take my queen. I take their rook. They take back, and I do this. At the end, material is rook and 2 minor pieces for a queen, if I counted that correctly, which should be good for me. Let's take a look. So here, bishop a6, b1. They don't have time to take my rook because I would take their bishop. So they have to try and take my queen. Now I take their rook with a check, so there's no in-between moves from this one. Doesn't matter how they take because I'm taking the, let's say like this, because I'm taking this one. At the end, as I mentioned, 2 minors and a rook for a queen, and it's easier to play with. So it's more points according to the point system, and it's easier to play with from a human standpoint. I would just take the open file because also the knight is protecting this neatly, and black is the one with an advantage here.
And he says, I know you get the rook and 2 pieces for a queen and pawn, but by making the g4, you essentially want the queen to attack.
Yeah. So now the attack is admittedly over. There's no chance black goes for a kingside attack anymore, but we can just play the strategic position here and try to convert the, even though it's not a material advantage, technically, the positional advantage. Yeah. Strategic advantage. Because they have a bad bishop also, so that plays a serious role. Our bishop is a monster. We have the open file. So our pieces are great, as well as just better. So we're doing really well here. But thank you for the question. Appreciate it.
Okay, last game.
Last game. So we have the development normal, and then let's see the steps. So development has been complete. Knight e5. Would you like me to say the steps as we go through the moves, or do you want to just recognize them? Up to you.
Have we started the steps yet?
That's what I'm saying. Just to make sure.
Well, we have a central control, I feel like, where you have a strong knight on e5.
There are definitely hints that we should attack kingside. So again, better pieces, coordinated pieces as well. A little bit of not extra space, but mostly better pieces here. Tell us that.
Yeah.
So let's take a look here. Knight d7, king h1. King h1 just because I'm looking to go f4. I don't want to deal with any diagonals here.
Yeah.
Just a nice safety move. And sometimes I want to go rook g1, g4 also. g6, bishop h6. They just weaken themselves, so I take advantage of it. Rook e8 was played to get out of this. f4. Why not? Getting the rooks in sometimes. Fate. Bishop g5. If you are in the attack, don't trade unless you see a great reason to. So bishop g5 pin makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, because they are weakened. Well, they played g5, so you want the dark squared bishop.
Yeah, you need to take advantage of those. There is some benefit in taking these off the board as well, so you can infiltrate with your knights and queen here. But that's a little bit more difficult. I thought maybe this was slightly better. Queen.
Do you want to double?
Sorry?
Do you want to bring the rook as well?
Yeah. When you attack, all the pieces, if possible, should come into the battle. So this one is in the battle because it's stopping 94. So it's also kind of part of the attack. But my plan, if everything stays, if I don't see any better chances, is rook f3, rook h3, and then get the other one in as well. Rook f1, rook f3, rook g3. And I have 2 rooks here, just there has to be a tactic, following our usual rule.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, my opponent played h5. And h5 is a little bit strange. Can you recognize why I believe this is a little bit strange?
I think I'm just immediately kind of looking at the light squares now on the knight and on the bishop. I feel like maybe you could think about taking one of those spots, but it might be a bit early. But I'm thinking about it.
Looks very fun to play, to be honest.
But yeah, it also brings the G pawn break closer.
Definitely.
But yeah, I'm kind of like looking at attacking those pawns at least.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's
this is more of a target
the
than
right
anything.
answer.
We said when there's an attack, there's multiple ways to attack. So definitely, I would see this as a target, same as you do. So I would try to make the g4 pawn break work. Actually, it does already on the count of this. So maybe g4 is an idea. Maybe even taking here. Why not? Take,
Hmm.
take, take. Because their pieces are very tied down, even though they are like nearby. So we can start munching our pawns. Already, after we take this one, which we're guaranteed to take, we have three pawns for a piece. So
Yeah, I think
we
it
don't
would
even
be
have to put.
even more strong if we had a rook lifted, a rook or two
Yeah,
lifted, so that they were like supporting the attack. But
agreed.
it looks like an idea.
Agreed. Yeah. So I would probably lift the rook and then go for something like this, seeing as they can't really take here ever because they take back with the f pawn. So definitely a good way to attack. Now here's the thing: when you attack, it's hard to switch from this strategic thinking into tactical thinking.
Yeah.
So if I told you in this position, white has a tactic, you'd probably see it quite quickly. So let's give it a try. Let's try it right now. White to play and win.
Hmm. That was why I was thinking about taking those pawns, but I guess there's something else
Mm,
then.
something else.
Okay. I don't immediately see it, so I think I'll do check capture threat. No checks. Capture. We could take the pawn, but you already said it wasn't that.
Correct. What other captures exist?
Take the knight is capture.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, you can take, I think you can take the d7 knight with your knight, and then you get the knight on f6.
Nice job. Yeah. Utilizing the pin here, the queen is a bit overloaded, doing too much, so we go knight takes d7, and they cannot take with the knight because of the pin, so they have to take with the queen. At that point, we take the knight, and we are up a piece. That's how it went in the game. So I remember in this game, I was also in my sort of strategic thoughts. Then I
Yeah.
realized, oh, wait. So it's really hard to feel that moment of tactics, but it usually happens when you have three pieces or more. There's a saying, three is the magic number when it comes to attacking. Have you heard of this before?
No, never. But it makes sense, and also you have the pin on the board as
Yeah, yeah.
well.
So there are some tactical elements, but usually three pieces are already enough to make a tactic work. So essentially, what I'm trying to say is when you have three active pieces inside the attack, you should already look for tactics almost at every single move.
That's a nice rule. I never heard
Yeah,
about it, so I think it's gonna be
really
handy
helps
for
out
sure.
me personally. Yeah. So I just ended up winning a piece and converting quite smoothly. They even traded queens for me, so that was nice. And I went on to win. But the steps were a bit hard to recognize, and they will be in a real game because it's not that clean, especially when we don't have that fully closed center. So step one was actually achieved with a knight e5 move. This one. So as we
Yes.
said before, sometimes you can close the center with a piece, not necessarily a pawn. Because anytime I go e4, I'm convinced that they would take. Usually that's the best move. And then it's kind of half open, really hard to attack. So sometimes knight e5 is good enough. And sure, this knight is
Yes.
subject to attack, but playing f6 at any point would
Yes.
seriously weaken the light
Yes.
squares.
Yes.
We meet f6
You're
with
just
queen
happy to
h5.
see f6.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There's a lot of patterns, tactical ones, where they try like knight d7, you play something, let's say, and they play f6, and you meet this with queen h5. Meet f6 with queen h5. And if they try to take the knight, they get forced checkmated. I'm not sure what the name of this checkmate is. I think it's the Max Lang mate or something like this.
Some fancy
Boom,
name.
and boom. There's a fancy name. But basically, instead of taking with the queen immediately, you take with the bishop to reroute your bishop to cover the escape square f7 before delivering the checkmate. It's like one of those chess.com puzzle rush tactics.
Yeah, it looks pretty for sure.
Very cool.
I just want to quickly say thank you so much, Stickfish, for gifting the sub. I really appreciate it. And you got a question from Kayudo. How do you know when the three are active? And I guess it's an indication when they are placed in the opponent's territory.
Yeah, covering a lot of key squares in the opponent's territory, putting pressure on enemy pieces. There's no like absolute concrete rule, but that's kind of the intuition. So in this position, let's take a look at it one more time. This one, the reason I highlighted these three, but didn't highlight this bishop, for example, is because it's only like attacking a pawn,
Yeah.
whereas these ones put concrete pressure on pieces. Like that's a pin, that's an attack. So these are
Mm,
much more valuable things.
mm, mm.
At most, with this, you could like win a pawn, which is
Yeah,
it just feels intuitively to me. It feels like these are active, whereas these ones are not really. They can be, but not yet.
yeah.
That's kind
Makes
of the
makes sense. Like the others are kind of pointing out in nowhere right now.
Mhm.
They're like crashing into pawns.
Yeah,
While the others are actually pointing towards targets, or they're pointing towards officers.
officers. Yeah, exactly.
Officers.
Wonderful. Awesome. And with that, we finished everything you need
Yeah.
to know about how to set up and execute an attack, from which positions you could do it, how do you actively get into those positions, the steps you could take from move
Mm,
one
mm,
to
mm.
do so.
I think you know what, I learned a lot of things. I had a lot of light bulb moments. I
I'm
think
glad.
the coolest takeaways for me was you might be a bit disappointed to hear this, but I really liked when you said the bishop is essentially just a better pawn. I don't mind. I never thought about it before. I really liked that one.
Hmm.
And also the three pieces rule was also like a light bulb moment for me. And I think it was very good to reinforce that how important central control is for a kingside attack. And it's actually like some central control or total central control. Like you need something to start attacking on the flank,
Yes.
and uh, and seeing that position where it absolutely don't work, when there's like open files in the center, when it's just like
Hmm.
idiotic to start pushing on the flank. It's just a
Yeah.
death wish essentially. So yeah, I think yeah, this one it was very instructive. So I learned a lot from it, and I'm very motivated to start controlling the center and launching king attacks now.
Let's go.
Yeah.